Welcome to Bleach Revisited. I am Carker Gold, your host to this series in which we read every single chapter of the Bleach manga, provide analysis, response, as well as connection to the rest of the series. This is episode 38, in which we will be reading chapter 38, Bent. What's wrong, Kisuke? What? A hollow? At a time like this? Sorry, Kisuke. Tell me the rest later. The message is gone? So soon. Ichigo's unusually fast today. Again? It went blank again. Is this thing broken? Again? It must be broken. There's no way hollows could be appearing at this rate. Right? What's going on? The number of hollows is exploding. What's wrong with the sky? Some chaotic supernatural event? What is it? What's happening? Bleach, chapter 38. Bent. Let's go, Chad. We'll miss the cheap lunch hour prices. I'm gonna make you pay the extra 500 yen. Huh? I don't have it. That's right, you don't. So move. I will make you pay. This looks bad. This feeling, I felt it before. That does it! I subsist on almost nothing. I'm barely alive. I'm not one of you spoiled students who gets to eat just for being alive. I live for my next meal. What did I just say? You live for your next meal. That's right. Now let's go. Don't get meat unless it's on sale. Make sure it's past the expiration date. Repeat, thou shalt not pay full price at Safeway. Whoa, that scared me. What was that, a gas explosion? What is this? This feeling? What is it? That one spot, shimmering like heat waves. There's something there. Something that was I know that something invisible is there. I felt this before somewhere. Chad, you okay? An explosion! Call the police! Huh? It moved. Whoa! Ah! Ah! Shigeo, Harutoki, run! It's after me? Okay, fine. Wait, Chad, why are you running from us? Chad! I don't know what that thing is, but it's chasing me. So I'm gonna lead it to a place where it can't hurt anybody else. There's a vacant lot up ahead. I hope nobody's there. I have to get there. Go! Ooh! Oops, my bad. Kurosaki, what's wrong with you? Are you on Mars again? Do you want to play or not? What? Want to fight? Come and get some then. You're gonna... Sorry, I'm going home. Huh? Hey, wait! Wait, Kurosaki! Today sucks. I can't even concentrate on soccer because of that weird blur. I'm gonna take a bath and go to bed early. Hey, you're Ichigo's friend, the parakeet guy. Ichigo's little sister. What's a grown man doing in a vacant lot all alone? What? What is that? Karin's friends, we have Ryohei Toba, aka Ryohei, the nastiest. Kazuya Usaka, aka Usaka, wears glasses but isn't smart. Kei Uehara, aka Donnie. Donnie, because he looks like Donald Duck. And Hayata Tojoin, aka Pinta. Despite having an upper class name, he's as poor gets. That is it for chapter 38 of the Bleach manga. At least I'm pretty sure we're on 38 here. Make sure I'm not losing my mind. Yep, we are on 38. So, pretty neat chapter. I do enjoy it. Has some pretty cool things to talk about. Let's hop right into the analysis first, let's say. Looking at really both the art as well as the narrative. I like that we hop right into the action here. Really great, I think, first page with both Ishida and Ichigo again, left, right, opposed, black and white. Their designs are very much meant to rival each other, right? Where Ichigo's kind of got this wild hair, Ishida's is more combed down and well kept. Where Ichigo's got kind of the blonde hair, which is white in the series, right? Here we see Ishida with dark, black hair. Where Ichigo typically wears his expression pretty clearly on his face. Ishida is much more reserved with his expression, much more serious kind of expression, in a different way than, of course, Ichigo's own seriousness. And then, of course, their outfits as well, the black versus the white. So this is really Kubo really setting up Uryu as this rival character, right? That especially like his worldview or the way that he carries himself is like, as well as all these design elements, are in opposition to Ichigo. And so naturally this is also the way that we'll also see them constantly in these chapters, where Ishida is oriented opposite to Ichigo as well, to really establish that sort of difference there. So, we have, of course, Uryu Ishida on the left, Ichigo rushing right. And then we cut to, of course, Kisuke at the bottom, who is also oriented the other way. As we know, he's not partaking in any of this, right? And he's been kind of coy about it, but it's a neat kind of hop from one character to the other, and then we set scene with Urahara interacting here with Rukia. Clearly, he's noticed something, right? So the idea, of course, this is something that Ishida brought up, right? That you can, a good Soul Reaper can sense the energy, and Ishida is a Quincy. He can sense these spiritual pressure, and to an extent, other humans can as well, as we know, Gon Kanoji as well can. And so, and obviously Ishida is a Quincy, he's a human, he has the spiritual power. So here we get Urahara is able to sense it as well, which obviously we know Urahara is, at the very least, involved in all this supernatural stuff. He's getting supplies from the Soul Society. So it makes perfect sense, that he's also on this like level above Ichigo, definitely, and that he's able to sense this stuff whenever maybe Ichigo can't, despite being able to see spirits. So kind of neat. We get this really great moment. It's real memorable in the anime too. But of course, this is the moment that I always remember whenever I remember this part of the series, is Rukia's pager going off constantly, and like the sound, like it going off, and then the update kind of going away, and the message being gone, and it beeping, and then being gone, beeping, being gone, and then it being overwhelmed with the different hollows. I love that here, especially, we get a lot of Kisuke just being silent as Rukia is really panicking over this. Like, she doesn't know what's going on, but maybe Kisuke has his own ideas of it. And we get that also in their posture, too. As Rukia is going through the different thoughts of what this might be. We get a couple different expressions from here, even on this page, into the shock that she has as she realizes this is a real serious kind of situation. And then, I love the turn to the 6 different dots on there, right? That there's just tons of hollows. Excuse me, I'm coughing and burping and all kinds of stuff. Just my body is rebelling against this recording this episode, but that's what you're gonna have to deal with. Um, no, this is also memorable. I remember this is the way that one of those episodes opened. If you notice, I use the title cards for all the episodes for my chapters, and so of course this is episode like 10 or 11 or something. Um, Maybe a little bit later than that. But if you go back and look at like the teen chapters that I have, you can definitely see the episode title card that corresponds with this because it has the same little uh, like readout sort of imagery used. But I love that we get this close up of the phone screen, and oh boy, dated phones, huh? But yeah, she runs out, and then we also have this close shot of Rukia realizing what's actually happening. I think that's fantastic, especially to turn a page on, and of course we get the big fissure in the sky. Um, and as she's wondering about it, of course, we still get Kisuke there, not saying anything, and he's got this very kind of serious negative expression, which is a difference for him. You know, usually we see him, he's putting on this happy face. Even whenever he's serious, he seems more in control, but now he seems upset over the course that this has taken. And especially considering that, you know, Rukia just came to him to talk to him about Quincy, right? And that she was concerned about Quincy. Maybe he's remembering something about the Quincy. Who's to say? But regardless, it's clear that Urahara has a good idea of what's going on and does not approve of it. And yeah, we get into the bint. We get a lot of dialogue here from Chad's friend, his bandmate. So I think that's one wonderful thing is that Chad's like in this band. But yeah, we get this guy that, you know, they got to go and get the cheap lunches because they don't make that much. Um, all the while, I think it's meant to really juxtapose where Chad is and the concerns that he has with the supernatural stuff versus these other guys that are just kind of normal. And this is how normal people go about this. I really like the times that we get to see what like a normal person might perceive versus the kind of world that our characters are in. Um, you know, it's always pretty neat to get that sort of difference from just like what is the mundane. Um, Probably one of the coolest intros for Bleach, notably, is it Rambu no Melody, whatever one it is that has all of the action that's happening, but it'll show, you know, different scenes where we actually see the characters fighting in the sky and all of this, and then it'll show scenes where, you know, it's just what the normal person would see. So like, you know, buildings are getting cut up and, you know, power lines and stuff. It's neat. Like the I think the anime really, especially early on, try to sell the idea that like natural disasters, especially, are you know, different sort of um, things like that were blamed on nature rather than hollow attacks, which is interesting. The manga does a little bit of that, but it's not as explicit about it the way that hollow attacks get interpreted. I love that this guy just kicks Chad. Chad just planks over. This is a ridiculous moment, but Chad is completely unfazed as he's like just little small ellipses bubbles from Chad because he could care less about that. And of course, we have this creature breaking out of this isn't the one. I don't think this is meant to be the one like way up in the giant tear in the sky. I think this is supposed to be like one right near Chad that's breaking through um, this hollow bulbous G, right? Which yeah, certainly has a design, uh, but is more of a humanoid hollow than what we've seen like a lot of so far. And I like, you know, especially the way that Chad is like set in kind of opposition to it, and that he has some perception of it, but not really. It's kind of neat how this effect is given. Um, Only on reread have I realized that this is a tree in the background, not a part of the hollow's design or anything. But yeah, he has this like vague sense of where it is. He can't fully perceive it. Um, and then of course he's remembering that fight with Shrieker. I love that. Of course, the other guys think it's people are saying, oh, it's like a gas explosion, right, something like that. But Chad's able to at least sense enough to save his friends, Shigio and Harutoki. I believe that these were the guys that were with him also whenever the Parakeet chapters opened too. So it's kind of a neat moment of continuity. But Chad soon realizes that, of course, this thing's coming after him. I love the difference in like physicality here, like the way that Chad like has these kind of boxer-like moves as he feints over to the side here, and realizes that it's trying to fight him, and then just turns on a heel and runs off. It's pretty smart, like pretty quick thinking on Chad's part. And so of course his idea is like, well, I'll go to this vacant lot. There'll be nobody there, and we come to learn, of course, that lot is exactly where they are playing this soccer game, apparently. Or like right next to it, because she leaves, right? It's kind of bizarre because it seems pretty open for a vacant lot, but I guess lots can be vacant and in the open, right? Doesn't have to be necessarily between two buildings, kind of thing. But yeah, with the stuff with Karen, I think we get, this is a pretty good expression for her. We get her drawn in a couple ways we, maybe haven't seen yet. She's getting taken more and more seriously as a character, which I kind of appreciate. We get her early on kind of set up for jokes, but more so than both. We got a few serious moments with Ishin, but especially more so than Yuzu. We get Karen kind of having a lot of these more serious moments. So it's nice to have some space on page kind of dedicated to that. Of course, love this Chad having sprinted over here kind of realization. Yeah, you're the parakeet guy, which I love that she says that. It's good reminder for us too, like as if we had forgotten about Chad at this point. But I mean, it has been a few volumes, so for someone who's actually following this weekly, yeah, it's maybe been a few months, since you really have remembered exactly everything with Chad and the parakeet. And so that serves as like a reminder for the audience, as well as exactly how Karen would remember this, right? It's Ichigo's friend, the parakeet guy, right? So these are affirmations of exactly these characters and their relationship to Ichigo, which is important because Ichigo's trying to protect Karen. So it's interesting that, of course, Chad gets there and ends up having to protect Karen instead of Ichigo, right? But Chad gets right to it, no questions asked. And yeah, I love this panel of them reacting to the hollow and turning to kind of face it. It's pretty effective artwork. And again, you can see Kubo really loving to use the kind of reflection on the black of this hat to really give the sense of its contour and shape. All over. Whenever I talk about the line work, especially here, you can see like with Chad's hair, like giving it the very distinct shape through the way in which the shading is used, the blacks and whites kind of playing off of each other. It's pretty effective. All in all, I think more and more we're starting to see these moments where Kubo's really playing with his values in ways to make the art kind of work and pop. This panel also really working really well from this explosion happening on the right, and so we read it left to right, and we can really read this as like Chad jumping out of the way. It's all good stuff. Yeah. It's a lot to think about, especially whenever you consider like exactly how much Kubo is spending time on Chad's hair to really sell it as this curly kind of head of hair, versus the way that other hair gets depicted here, especially straighter hair, kind of and looking at that throughout. something to kind of be aware of, which it's easy to kind of look over and kind of be like, oh, okay, and it have this instant readability to it, but that it takes a lot of artistic effort to kind of make it read one way versus another. And so, like, the waviness of his hair, especially, kind of gets sold pretty well in this, I think. Anyway, more than just doing it all black with the curls would be. That's it for this chapter. We get to learn a little bit about Karen's friends, these little chumps. But I guess that's, the group that you fall into whenever you're this kind of tomboyish, pessimistic kind of character in a lot of ways. But yeah, that's about it. Talk about the chapter. Now, as far as how I feel about it, I do like this chapter a good bit. I like Bulbous G's design. The cheeks are a bit much, but I mean, I think I like the mask as this kind of almost like some sort of mythological monstrous mask, almost. Also, that being one of the more humanoid designs that we've gotten so far is interesting. But I like getting to see Chad get some kind of mix in here. Clearly, this volume cover is dedicated to him. This is his volume, so we'll be getting to see Chad in a bit of action here, which is pretty cool. He's one of the characters that got introduced initially and ends up being one of the kind of main human characters of the series, so it's cool to see these kind of formulative moments for Chad. But the other kind of neat thing, I also really like that exchange between Rukia and Urahara. It really shows how they're both in like different places on this whole matter, right? And that, like, one of the things that we get a lot in the series is excuse me again, it's Rukia really being aware of a lot of things, being really in the know and knowledgeable and only sharing as much as she needs to with Ichigo. But here we're really getting a moment where Rukia doesn't know things, right? She doesn't know about the Quincy. She doesn't know what's going on here with this kind of all these hollows coming into the city. Whereas we definitely get a sense that Urahara is aware of these things. And so it really establishes Urahara as being maybe more involved or more knowledgeable than Rukia is, which up to this point, Rukia has really been kind of our, the person that we've had in the series that has known the most. But more than that, we really get confirmation between last chapter and this one, of course, that Urahara is very clearly aware of all of this and is pretty serious about these things, even if he pretends like he isn't. So that's neat. Yeah, it's kind of cool. kind of cool moment. Really sells the juxtaposition between those characters, as well as kind of putting us into a moment of realizing that this is pretty serious, because even Rukia is out of her depth, right? So, yeah, that's about all I have on that. Like I said, I like the chapter. It's got a few pretty cool action beats. Obviously, there's not really a fight at the core of the chapter or anything. What's really at the heart of the chapter is, that conversation with Rukia and Urahara, and then the flip to Chad getting pursued by Bulbous G and then running into Karen. But I think all of that really works. It helps to not just like in the previous ones, we're building this forward momentum, we're building up this event, it's getting more and more intense, we're having these characters run into each other, etc., etc. But also we're getting a little bit more world building, we're starting to understand a little bit more about everything that's going on. We're starting to see these characters pushed against each other in these weird ways and coupled in different ways that we haven't expected, right? Because certainly you would expect maybe Ichigo to show up to save Karen, but Chad showing up there is interesting and kind of proves, like, for a character pairing that we might not have expected, them both being in scene together. And so, yeah, surprisingly, despite this being a whole thing that's supposed to be a showdown between Ichigo and Uryu, we get very little of them in this chapter, they get shown in this first page and then not mentioned. Well, only mentioned really by Rukia and by Karen and Chad, right? So not a lot else for those main characters. So the assumption is that they're both dealing with hollows, but they haven't had any sort of significant encounter yet. Whereas the encounters that are significant are the things that these other people are dealing with, right? So that's kind of interesting that like this ends up as much as it is this challenge from Uryu to Ichigo, right? The focus of this is more of how this is affecting everybody else, which is a kind of neat way to write and involve a lot of the other characters in your series. Because a lot of the time that we what we want is to watch the protagonist do all kinds of cool things and be involved in things, and he certainly is here. But this gives an excuse to really put a situation that's out of the protagonist's control that these other characters really had to get involved in, and so the stakes are still real, and we still care about these other things. And I think it's really smart to have Chad show up to help Karen out because we have that connection there between her and Ichigo. So we still feel like this isn't just a pointless side encounter, but this is something really meaningful. Even if you don't really care for Chad or the character at all yet, it all ties itself together. I think in a way that's pretty effective. Um, Compare this to like what a lot of shonen manga will try to do to give these side characters like a chance to shine is the sort of battle tournament styling, where it's like, okay, well, we all have to fight people, and so you get your fights and I get my fights, and like that can work and that can be fine and that can be done well. But in a lot of ways, that's super artificial because then like you have to kind of create a narrative space in which characters are willingly participating in a big fighting tournament, and they can't fight together and they have to do like these one-off bouts or whatever. Um, it's an artificiality of the genre that shows up a lot, um, and I like it here and there, but it's the sort of thing that like it's tiresome. It's ridden a lot, and so if anything, I will praise Bleach. I will say slight spoilers, but Bleach doesn't have ever that sort of tournament arc, which is very prevalent. Um, and then what you'll also get, if it's not a tournament arc, you'll get a very similar. Yu Yu Hakusho does this, right? Where Yu Yu Hakusho definitely has its well range of tournaments, but it also had the idea of like, okay, these friends have to go take on the enemies, and so for the rest of the group to proceed, the friends have to like one off against certain enemies, right? Um, and so that idea of like, okay, well, the group has to go ahead while these people square off or whatever, like, for whatever arbitrary reason, only one person can participate in this one fight against the big boss guy. And then, of course, the main character is going to get to fight the big bad dude. That's usually what you see. So I like that this pretty early on is like, okay, well, how can we involve these other characters in a way that's got these high stakes and is interesting and is organic to the series? And it's like, well, by creating this conflict between Ishida and Ichigo and having Ishida not care about the fact that he's going to be bringing in these people and like being even aware of the fact that Ichigo's friends are going to be targeted, I think that's a really interesting and decisive way for us to get these other characters having these kind of big moments in these fights that otherwise would feel a bit arbitrary. Um, and certainly we'll get those other kind of ways that gets handled as we go throughout the series. But it's something to think about, because whenever you have a battle shonen with a lot of characters in it, it's like, well, I can't have them all fight in the same big melee. Or well, you can, but it's going to be hard to kind of balance and hard to do that consistently too throughout the entirety of this show or this manga. Um, so it's more realistic, and what's more exciting is usually having singular characters pair off against other singular characters. And so then it's like, well, I think what's most compelling tends to be ones where they have, deep, like kind of personal desires that are at odds, right? That's the nature of conflict. We talked about that in a previous episode. You really want your characters to have these sort of goals that put them in opposition to each other. and to have their goals be realistic sort of things, that both of them want, enough to kind of come to terms, like not to terms with one another, but to come to blows with one another, right? You want conflict to arise from these goals that are maybe non-negotiable and non-compliant with one another. that both of them can exist in harmony or be achieved together. It doesn't have to be opposing goals; it just has to be goals that are opposed. So what I mean is, it's not like, oh, Ichigo wants to save somebody, or you doesn't like wants Ichigo not to save them. That's not the case here. Instead, the goals that we have are like Uri wants to prove himself and prove that Shinigami are pointless, and like that Quincy can do everything the Soul Reapers can, and that Ichigo is woefully unprepared to do all this that he says that he's going to do, as far as protecting people goes, right? So Uryu's got this whole complex that makes a lot of sense for his character, and his motivations that are driving him this way make sense, but they're, at odds with Ichigo's wanting to protect people in this sort of natural way. And so that's what drives this sort of conflict, right? Um, so yeah, it's neat stuff. I think it all works. Um, it's all effective, but yeah, you ultimately want your characters to be doing these sort of individualistic fights, so you can show off their individual talent, traits, and growth. And you know, you have to figure out ways to do that as a series. And as you get more and more characters, it becomes harder and harder to balance that, because it's like, well, what do I spend my page time rendering? How do I tell the story that I want to tell? Whenever you think about it, it's like, okay, I want to tell a bigger story. It's not just about fights. As cool as fights are, but how do I tell a kind of larger narrative within that? And I think Bleach tends to be more concerned with telling its larger narrative than it really is with just setting up for cool fights. But as a series, Bleach exists to set up for a lot of cool fights, and I think it has a lot of really effective setups for cool fights. And I think in general, whenever you talk to people about Bleach, a lot of what excites them about it is whenever fights are set up effectively and have a lot of things you're expecting from those fights that could be delivered upon. And then where people tend to be disappointed is where, there are expectations, there are like this sense of like, oh man, I wish that character would get cooler powers or have a cooler fight. It's always the failure to deliver upon certain expectations, or certain interesting characters. And I think that's less us failing in the series, because the series at least built these sort of interesting uh, questions in your mind, right? And presenting you with these interesting characters, amalgamating in such a way that you could imagine them kind of involved in battle and what they might do, and you have questions about what their abilities might be. Um, and so that's kind of interesting. You can always leave it to what ifs, and obviously in every series, every character isn't going to fight every character, right? So you're not always going to get 100% a matchup. What's important is what the author really wants to put before you, and the sort of story they want to tell with the conflicts that do arise. Whew. But yeah, I can talk about that forever. Basically, the short of it is, I don't think I really begrudge Bleach for ever falling short of my expectations. I just admire the ways in which it works, and I think it does a lot of putting these characters in conflict in ways that shonen manga often really don't finesse as well. Yeah, I mean, the draw quick comparisons. I think, you know, looking especially at the big three, right? I think One Piece does a pretty effective job of building up these sort of antagonist characters, and building these conflicts on an island per island basis. But especially whenever we start to get recurring sort of characters, it builds towards some pretty interesting conflicts. Usually you don't get the typical sort of shonen trait from that, which is, I think a point to its merit. But on the flip side, you have Naruto, which is Naruto feels like the most like hackneyed reason to have fights happen ever most of the time. It's like, all right, we're gonna have the Chunin exam, which is a big tournament, and that's gonna get interrupted so that we can have a bunch of other fights, and then we're going to send this team of ninja to go get back Sasuke, but oh, it happens to be just enough to where they can all pair off in the one-on-one fights with all the retinue that Sasuke has from the sound, and like, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then whenever you get into Shippuden, I mean, the large conflict at the end of that is this huge ninja war, which you would think there would be some really cool warfare sort of stuff going on, and these mass battle sort of things, and that tends to fall short. I mean, I think of series like Kingdom, which really deliver on their mass battle scenes and really having interesting strategies and also cool moments for singular characters too. Uh, Go read Kingdom. Kingdom's pretty good. There's a reason why Kingdom's still getting published. It's because it's the longest running actually good manga. I say that there's a couple of other manga I like that have been running for a while, but we could talk about that in the comments. Point is that it baffles me, especially at the end of Shippuden, that like not only is it they use this war essentially to set up for a bunch of lame individual character battles, but then what's worse is that they bring all these characters from the dead, so you have to retread character battles that you've already had, and it's like, well, we've already had this conflict. There's like, you're just wasting space doing a retread of something that we've already done. We've been here. This does nothing new narratively or even visually for us. It's just like it's like spinning the wheels. Um, like there's certainly a lot of things I like about Naruto, but it always felt like the way in which it built its conflicts and the way that it kind of got its characters fighting always felt super arbitrary to me. Um, and I don't know. I'd rather those things kind of be like, if you're going to be arbitrary about it, at least like lean full on into it. Law of Ueki comes to mind if you've ever seen that show or read the manga. I think the show is solid enough, but like that series is entirely like, hey, we're gonna have a big tournament, and that's the entire cornerstone of the series, is that it's a big tournament between these characters. And so that's the only reason why they're in conflict with each other, is because they're all pulled into this tournament. And so the series gets to really lean into that as the organizational structure of like why these conflicts happen whatsoever, in the first place, rather than it being, like Naruto, where ostensibly we have this ninja world where the ninja missions happen, but we have to kind of jump through the hoops to figure out ways that we can get these characters fighting that aren't longer like arcs like the first one that we got with Sabza. So yeah, it's a shame. That's one of the things that I was hoping to see from Naruto that it really didn't deliver on, is more kind of ninja missions and building these kind of organic conflicts. But that ain't Bleach. Bleach, I think, does that really well, and I think that's one piece of praise that I, again, don't see for Bleach very much, is that it builds these sort of really interesting conflicts in a really effective way and gets its characters to these really cool moments really, really quickly. Um, but eh. Anyway, that's it for that chapter. Like I said, all in all, I think it's a pretty good chapter. It does some pretty smart things narratively. Um, it couples these characters and builds these characters in interesting ways, and the art, I think, is fantastic in this one. So it's all that good stuff. It's what I want out of Bleach. Big supernatural sort of conflicts, interesting outcomes for characters, and developing these characters in this world in kind of a neat way. But that's it. Let's get into spoilers and how this connects to the rest of the series, which I don't have a ton of connection. Obviously, Ruki is not aware of what's going on because she's still pretty wet behind the ears whenever it comes. Like, she's been around for 150 years, but her experience with hollows, as we've come to find out, is pretty limited. I mean, like, she fights them usually on a one-on-one basis. She's gone through what she's gone through in Academy, but nothing on this level. She's never really had to deal with a Minos class enemy, especially before, I'm pretty sure. So she's sort of, especially compared to a character like Urahara, who we know has gone through all this, and I think Urahara is definitely aware of the circumstances that are happening here, especially whenever it gets brought up that there's a Quincy, right? I think it's pretty clear that Urahara is aware that this hollow bait probably got used, right? And that he's, kind of dreading getting involved because certainly he wants to lie low, and not have to get involved. But you think about, this huge thing happening, all these hollows descending upon Karakura Town, and you got to think about the forces that are here because definitely the Visored are around, right? Execution is around, so it's curious what they're doing. You have to wonder, and I wonder if it is like really the idea of them lying low, dispatching what hollows they can, but not really making a big show of it, or what? Because both the Visored and the Fullbringers, I will say, like, are meant to be more secretive and are meant to be kind of a low key thing. So it is a question to have, but I think certainly, this sort of event is maybe one that caught Shinji's eye, because if you remember, like right whenever Ichigo gets back from Soul Society, Shinji enrolls at his school. So I think this is a kind of neat connection because definitely with Urahara aware of this, I think the older characters like Shinji especially would be kind of aware of what's going down and really kind of astutely observing it and maybe choosing not to get involved, even though that they should, right? Or they have the power to at least help resolve it. It's kind of neat. Easy to forget Chad was in a band, I guess. I think I mentioned he has this kind of this, like I said, almost like a boxing kind of sway to the side, whenever he first gets struck against here, which of course he goes on to be a boxer, so that sort of physicality to him I think works, especially seeing that early on. Yeah, it's interesting to kind of draw a connection. Maybe I should have done this in my analysis, but both Ichigo and Chad try to leave these hollows away to where other people aren't at to kind of like help protect other people, right? So that's kind of neat that we get a little bit of resonance there between Ichigo and Chad. But I think part of the reason I want to talk about this in the spoiler section is especially the idea of Chad like throwing his friends to the side and running off on his own, right, and taking that danger upon his own. I mean, that all gets retreaded at the beginning of the Soul Society arc, right? That Chad is very much at the beginning of the series the kind of person to make sure everyone else is safe and together, and then to kind of venture into danger, by himself, right? Not stand among others. So it's interesting that, of course, he gets help from A. Kurosaki, even if he didn't intend to. Yeah, I mean that's pretty much the most of it here. Uh, I don't know that I really have anything to say about, like, obviously Chad develops his powers here, and we learn that it's meant to kind of protect people, and that it's the more defensive sort of arm. And I think that works here, especially that Chad awakens his defensive arm first because he's trying to protect Karen, rather than seeking to actively attack, like later in the Waco Mundo arc where we get, Chad on during the whole Orihime rescue stuff. That's whenever he's really attacking, whenever he awakens that sort of power. So it kind of makes a little bit more sense there, and I think works pretty well. But yeah, that's all I got for Chad. I don't have that many other connections here, so pretty short on the spoilers. Pretty light, but not every chapter has a lot of connections to the rest of the series. Obviously, this is more intimately connected to what we're going to get, in the next couple of chapters, but still interesting to see some sort of connections pop up. And if you see anything that I didn't, please let me know. I'm always curious. But yeah, that's that. That's it for this one, folks. This has been Karakura Gold with Bleach Revisited. As always, spirits are forever with you. Stay gold.